At the bustling LAX airport, amidst the early morning chaos, Danielle Carter stood out in an elegant black gown that effortlessly commanded attention. The dress, an expensive masterpiece, was a symbol of her refined taste and quiet confidence. As she approached the TSA checkpoint, her day took an unexpected and humiliating turn. A middle-aged TSA agent, with a smirk that hinted at malice, fixated on her. He instructed her to step aside for additional screening. Despite her initial unease, Danielle complied, placing her belongings in the bin and bracing for the routine procedure. However, the agent's actions quickly escalated beyond standard protocol. With a deliberate tug, he grabbed the hem of Danielle's gown and yanked it sharply, tearing the delicate fabric. The unmistakable sound of ripping silk echoed, silencing the surrounding crowd as onlookers stared in shock. "Oops," the agent quipped, a twisted grin on his face. "Guess it's not as sturdy as it looks." His words stung, not just for their dismissiveness, but for the underlying malice. Danielle, mortified and enraged, stood frozen, the jagged tear exposing her to judgmental glances and whispers from strangers. The incident was more than an assault on her attire, it was an attack on her dignity. This wasn't the first time Danielle had faced prejudice. As a black woman, she was no stranger to the subtle and overt ways people sought to undermine her. However, this act of degradation in such a public space crossed a line she refused to ignore. Summoning her resolve, Danielle pulled out her phone and called her husband, Ethan Carter, a prominent businessman and a key stakeholder in the airport. Her voice steady despite her fury, she relayed the incident, knowing Ethan wouldn't let it slide. This wasn't just about a dress. It was about respect, justice, and ensuring no one would dare treat her or anyone else this way again. The TSA agent's behavior toward Danielle Carter became blatantly unsettling. With an air of unnecessary authority, he directed her to step aside for what he claimed was a routine check. As Danielle placed her belongings in the bin, she couldn't shake the discomfort caused by his lingering gaze, which felt more invasive than professional. Without warning, the agent began sifting through her personal items with excessive scrutiny, his actions slow and deliberate as if to prolong her discomfort. Then, with a swift and shocking motion, he grabbed the hem of her elegant black dress and yanked it upward. The delicate fabric tore audibly, the sound of ripping silk cutting through the hum of the busy terminal. Gasps rippled through the surrounding crowd as the gown, once a symbol of Danielle's poise and sophistication, was reduced to a tattered mess. The tear left Danielle exposed, vulnerable to the judgmental eyes and murmurs of onlookers. The agent, unbothered by the scene he'd created, smirked and dismissed the damage. Looks like it wasn't as high quality as you thought, he remarked, his tone dripping with condescension. For Danielle, this wasn't just a careless act, it was a deliberate humiliation, an affront to her dignity. The public nature of the incident magnified her anger and frustration, making it clear this wasn't simply about a dress. It was about power, prejudice, and the agent's attempt to demean her in front of others. As the weight of the moment sank in, Danielle resolved not to let this act of disrespect go unanswered. Danielle took a deep breath and steadied herself, refusing to let the agent's actions strip her of her composure. With a voice that quivered just enough to show her anger, she turned to face him. "Are you serious? You just ripped my dress," she said, her tone sharp and demanding. The agent, now looking at her with an expression of cold indifference, let out a dismissive laugh that only fueled her rage. "Oh, come on," he said, shrugging as if this were some minor inconvenience. "It happens. Not my fault if your dress wasn't sturdy enough." His casual response stung, a reminder of the lack of accountability he had for his actions. The way he dismissed her frustration so easily and arrogantly amplified the humiliation she felt in that moment. Danielle's chest tightened, a mix of anger and disbelief coursing through her. The other passengers who had been watching in stunned silence began to murmur, some casting her pitying glances while others whispered in judgment. She felt exposed, the tear in her gown a public mark of disrespect. But more than that, it was the agent's attitude, his blatant disregard for her dignity, and his assumption that she wouldn't stand up for herself that made her blood boil. With determination flashing in her eyes, Danielle stood taller, refusing to show any sign of defeat. She knew this wasn't just about the dress. It was about refusing to let someone demean her without consequence. She clenched her jaw, holding back the tears that threatened to spill. The way he dismissed her reinforced that this moment wouldn't end here. She would make sure of that. Danielle reached for her phone, her hands trembling with a mix of fury and urgency. With a single tap, she called Ethan, her husband and a powerful figure in the business world who held significant influence over the airport's operations. The phone rang only once before he picked up, his voice sharp and filled with immediate concern. "Ethan, I need you here now," Eniel said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside her. "It's bad this TSA agent tore my dress, and he did it in front of everyone. He thought it was a joke." A pause on the other end followed, the silence heavy with tension before Ethan's voice cut through. "I'm on my way, and this'll be taken care of. Stay right where you are." The promise in his words brought a glimmer of reassurance. Ethan wasn't just any businessman. He was known for being relentless when it came to protecting those he cared about. Danielle took a deep breath as the minutes ticked by, feeling her heart pound with anticipation. The public embarrassment, the dismissive agent, and the humiliation that had been forced on her, she knew that Ethan would make sure this wrong was righted. This wasn't just a matter of a damaged dress. It was about defending her dignity and proving that no one could undermine her without consequence. As Danielle stood in the chaos of the airport terminal, her eyes darted from one onlooker to another, searching for some form of comfort. The murmurs around her were a mix of sympathy and judgment, but none of it could ease the tight knot of anger and humiliation in her chest. Just as she was about to retreat further into her thoughts, a voice broke through the noise. A woman, probably in her 60s, stepped forward, her cardigan-clad arms folded tightly as she approached Danielle. Her eyes, kind and knowing, met Danielle's. "I saw what happened, honey," she said, her voice warm and strong, cutting through the din of the bustling terminal. "You didn't deserve that. You have every right to be angry, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Danielle's eyes widened slightly, surprised by the woman's compassion. The words hit her like a balm, calming the fury that had been simmering in her veins. The woman's voice carried a familiarity, the same reassurance her grandmother used to offer during difficult times. It reminded her that strength could come from unexpected places, and she wasn't alone in facing this ordeal. "I've been through it too," the woman added, a gentle smile spreading across her face. "If you need a witness, I'm happy to speak up. You're not alone in this, dear." For the first time that day, Danielle felt a flicker of hope. She wasn't just a woman standing in a torn dress, cast in embarrassment. She was part of a larger story of resilience, one that had been echoed by many before her. The kindness from this stranger reignited her resolve to fight back, not just for herself, but for anyone who had ever been disrespected or belittled. Today was about reclaiming her dignity, and she wouldn't let this moment slip away without standing up for it. Ethan stormed into the airport, his sharp suit and confident stride commanding attention. The atmosphere around him shifted. Passengers, who had been watching the scene unfold, now turned to see who had arrived with such undeniable presence. His eyes locked onto the TSA supervisor who was standing near the security desk, her expression tense as she spotted Michael. "Hey, you!" Ethan called out, his voice low but powerful, slicing through the murmur of the crowd. The supervisor's face, already pale, blanched further as she realized who he was. Ethan Carter wasn't just any businessman. He was a key figure in the airport's ownership. A man who had the power to make or break careers. The supervisor stammered, unsure of what to say as Ethan advanced, his glare fierce. "I need to speak with you, now," he said, his tone brokering no argument. She opened her mouth, hesitating, before trying to regain her composure. "I'm not sure." Ethan cut her off with a look that silenced her. "You know exactly why I'm here. My wife, Danielle, was treated disgracefully by one of your agents. He ripped her dress, humiliated her in front of everyone, and acted as if it was a joke." His voice rose with each word, the intensity in his eyes daring anyone to question his resolve. The supervisor's face faltered, her hands shaking slightly as she glanced nervously at the agent who stood nearby, shifting uncomfortably under Ethan's glare. "Sir, I'll look into this," she stammered, trying to offer a semblance of control over the situation. "No," Ethan L. said, his voice cutting like steel. "We're beyond looking into it. This is about respect, and that man's actions were intentional. I want him fired today, no excuses, and I expect a formal apology to my wife in front of everyone. This isn't just about a dress, it's about showing that there are consequences for treating people this way." The supervisor's eyes darted around, realizing she had no leverage against Michael's authority. He wasn't finished. "And make sure your department knows that in 2024, we don't tolerate this kind of behavior. It's time for change, starting today." The agent's head dropped as he met Danielle's gaze, the weight of the moment sinking in. Ethan's voice softened as he turned to Danielle, his grip firm and reassuring. "We're not done, but we've made a point." Ethan stood firm, his eyes blazing with determination as he addressed the TSA supervisor, who was visibly shaken by his presence. "This isn't just about my wife's dress. It's about what that agent did to her and what it says about your department," he said, voice deep and resolute, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. Danielle stood beside him, her pride reignited, eyes sharp with resolve. The supervisor shifted uncomfortably, her fingers nervously tapping against her clipboard as she looked from Ethan to Danielle. "I expect the agent to be fired today. No delays, no excuses," Ethan continued, his tone unwavering. The surrounding crowd murmured in response, captivated by the confrontation and the power Ethan exuded. "And I want a public apology issued to my wife for the humiliation she endured and the disrespect she was subjected to. This isn't just about a single incident. This is about holding your department accountable for creating an environment where such behavior is tolerated." The supervisor glanced at the agent, who had now become the center of attention, his head low in shame. He knew the weight of the moment, but it was Ethan's presence and the steel in his voice that made the real impact. Ethan wasn't done. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a controlled but fierce whisper. "And while you're at it, review your entire staff. If someone has the audacity to act like this, there's no telling how many more have been mistreated. We are in 2024, not the 1950s, and it's time for change." Danielle felt a surge of empowerment as Ethan spoke. This wasn't just an effort to right the wrong done to her. It was a stand against a culture of complacency that allowed discrimination and disrespect to flourish. The supervisor's eyes widened as she realized the scope of what Ethan was demanding, her resolve crumbling in the face of his authority. "Make sure this gets handled," Ethan said, turning to Danielle with a look that spoke volumes. "This isn't over until it's right." The TSA agent, now visibly embarrassed, was escorted out of the terminal, his head bowed in shame. Danielle watched as the crowd, once judgmental, now whispered in astonishment and relief. The agent's dismissal was swift, a consequence of Ethan's unwavering demand for accountability. Soon after, news outlets began reporting on the incident, spreading the story of Danielle's mistreatment. The public outcry was loud, with many expressing support for Gabriella and condemning the agent's actions. What began as a moment of humiliation turned into a powerful statement. Disrespect and discrimination would no longer be tolerated. Danielle, standing tall with Ethan by her side, felt the weight of the moment shift from pain to empowerment, knowing the world would remember this as a stand for dignity and justice. As Danielle and Ethan walked out of the airport, a sense of triumph and solidarity filled the air. They had stood firm against injustice, and the outcome proved that respect and accountability could not be ignored. Danielle, once humiliated, now felt a newfound strength coursing through her. The experience had transformed her from a victim into a symbol of resilience. Ethan L., ever her protector, knew that this victory was about more than just the incident. There was about sending a clear message that such behavior had consequences. Danielle's resolve was unbreakable. She was determined to ensure that no one else would have to face what she did without a fight. As they left, Ethan squeezed her hand, a silent promise that he would always stand by her side. Their departure marked not an end, but the beginning of a movement for dignity and justice, reminding everyone that respect is earned and defended. The story ended with a powerful message of resilience and empowerment. Danielle, once reduced to a moment of humiliation, emerged stronger and more determined than ever. No longer just a victim, she had become a symbol of dignity, standing up for herself and inspiring others to do the same. The ordeal she endured, with Ethan's unwavering support, proved that injustice, no matter how small it may seem, would not go unchallenged. The incident resonated beyond the airport. It sparked conversations about respect, accountability, and the importance of standing up against mistreatment. Danielle's actions reminded everyone that dignity is not just a right, but something worth fighting for. With her head held high and a new sense of empowerment, Danielle knew that she had sent a clear message. Disrespect would be met with courage and resolve. As she walked away, she felt not just relief but pride, knowing that her strength had become a beacon for others facing similar challenges. This was more than an isolated incident. It was the beginning of a broader movement for fairness and respect.